The main goal of financial regulation in the United States is supposed to be the protection of consumers, investors, and their businesses from deception and fraud. Government agencies such as the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation should protect our interests and property rights from bad actors and criminals. Yet in far too many cases, the financial regulatory agencies that are supposed to be our useful servants have become arrogant masters. That's the introduction to a magnificent article recently published in National Review. When I read it, I agreed wholeheartedly. Then I looked to see who the author was, and it was none other than my friend Richard Morrison of the Competitive Enterprise Institute. He's an expert on corporate governance and finance regulation, in particular ESG theory. And Richard is visiting the Economic War Room today. Welcome, Richard.
Thanks so much for having me, Kevin.
Hey, I saw your great National Review article. I'm a fan of your podcast, Free the Economy, and I wanted to talk to you about how partisan bureaucrats have weaponized financial regulation. Then I want to drill down on how this impacts investors and what we ought to do about it. Can you give us the history of weaponized financial regulation? Did it start with choke point?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're seeing today is similar to what we saw during the Obama era. Regulators in the Obama era in the Treasury Department and at the FDIC and other bank regulators like the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, decided they simply didn't like certain kinds of businesses, and especially certain kinds of small businesses. So using their influence as regulators of bigger banks, they went to banks and said, well, look, you have all these small business clients here, and they're sort of politically controversial, so maybe it would be better if you cancel their accounts and didn't service them anymore. And so the big banks, not wanting any high-level trouble from the regulators, shut down a lot of those small business accounts. This wasn't a plan that was announced anywhere, and it certainly wasn't something that was authorized by Congress. But it ended up impacting a lot of different small businesses all across the country in different industries, whether it's gold and silver coin dealers or payday lenders or gun manufacturers and gun shops. And was only really pieced together when people started, exchanging experiences, and then eventually Republican members of Congress, found out about it and put forward a lot of effort to investigate it. And the Obama administration, once it was clear what they were doing, using illegitimate means to attack small businesses, backed off eventually.
They did eventually, and Governor Frank Keating, who was the head of the American Bankers Association, wrote brilliant articles. I met with him in D.C. about this, but these were legal businesses. We're not talking cannabis, although we see that with cannabis. What happens if the government decides that meat is bad for you and you ought to eat bugs, and then they decide to debank all of the meat producers or meat packers?
Well, exactly. Agricultural businesses are already being targeted both in the United States and then overseas in Europe. Some of your viewers and listeners may know about how agricultural businesses are being targeted over there because of climate change concerns and things like that. And what we've really seen is a lot of left-leaning policy advocates and politicians who couldn't get their preferred policies enacted. So in our case in Congress, or in some other cases overseas via legislature, they're trying to do them administratively, sort of via the back door without announcement, simply because they have oversight over certain industries. And so it's not a matter of any of these businesses having violated a law. It's simply almost sort of blackmail, where businesses will meet with a regulator and the regulators will say, well, we don't really like the way this looks, so it might be bad for you if you kept doing it. And a lot of businesses will take the hint.